I've been known to be long-winded and don't leave enough time at the end. So I'll go ahead and get going. And just to FYI, talked to my dad about it, and he said if I don't happen to leave enough time today to ask questions, then we'll just do another one where you can actually ask questions. So my goal, once again, is to actually leave enough time, but no promises. We'll see how it turns out. So once again, thank you all for coming out to listen to us talk for an hour. And I want to start with kind of a little story about, it goes back to Lesotho, but it's related to the concert that we had last night with Jason Gray. And I think it's kind of a fun little story of, we were out in the fields and I was not in the best of moods. We were doing it was like the worst job that I think we had. We were just like chopping weeds for like hours and hours on end. And it was no fun. I don't know whether chopping the beans was worse than chopping the weeds, but anyhow, that's beside the point. So anyhow, I was in a crummy mood, and I'm like, all right. So we went back in the afternoon to do the same thing, and I brought my iPod this time. And so I was listening to a Jason Gray song that was that Good to Be Alive. And it starts something along the lines of, is this really the life that I'm living? I can't believe, I don't deserve this. And so I'm looking around, I'm like, all right, yeah, this is a pretty cool life that I'm living, right? So I'm in the middle of Lesotho. Yeah, I'm doing crummy work, but I'm in the middle of Lesotho, mountains all around me. And then as this song is playing, some kids got out of school. And so they were walking down the road, and the kids decided they wanted to come see these white American people. And so one girl came up to me, saw that I had headphones in, took one out, and so we were jamming out to Jason Gray in the middle of a cornfield in Lesotho, and so we just got to have a little dance party. It all goes back to these times that it's super frustrating and we feel like maybe we're not doing anything, and then you have this moment that it's just like, this is so cool. Like, I can't believe that God chose me to do this and to have these experiences. And so, anyhow, kind of a tribute to our concert last night, but I think it's kind of a fun story. But it's also, today we're going to talk about Namibia. And I think this is the hardest country for me to talk about because there are a lot of challenges, a lot of hard things, a lot of frustrations in this country. And I think part of it is because we saw so much of our own country and our own flaws in their systems, but we are coming in from a different perspective and can actually see it with new eyes. So anyhow, we'll start with that. And do we have pictures? Okay. So anyhow, we'll start from the beginning. We started in South Africa and took a 24-hour bus ride there. So that was a treat to do that. We were actually with a Christian bus line, so we watched Christian movies the whole time, but they only had 8 hours worth. And so for our 12-hour trip, we got to watch a few movies over and over again. So that was interesting. So that's where we hung out for our 24 hours there and 24 hours back.
This is a double-decker bus, so we were on the top of the bus.
Yep, it's kind of a different way to go about it. I think there's a couple more pictures of the travels, maybe. I wish we would have gone down there. So, welcome to Rehoboth. That's the town that we stayed in. Rehoboth, they consider it to be a pretty small town, but I don't know. I don't know how many people actually live there. It's large enough to have 12 schools, so it can't be that small of a town. However, everyone in town knew exactly who we were. We'd be walking down the road to go to the shop and get our Bar One bars, our candy bars, or whatever, or get our ice cream, and we'd have people running up to us and giving us hugs. It was Miss Rachel, Miss Rachel. I'm like, I have no idea who you are, but hello.
Well, and like these kids, I mean, they would go to school, but I mean, they would walk from one side of the town to the other, which is like, hey, this is a pretty big town. So
Yeah.
I mean, we'd run into our kids all the time.
Yeah, so kids, I don't even know how they figured out what schools different kids went to, but they would be walking past like 3 schools to get to their school. I don't understand how it all worked. But yeah, so anyhow, that's the town that we were in. I think there's a couple more pictures of the town. So that's as you're coming in. We had a nice mountain view there as well. But of course, we didn't appreciate it enough because, well, we had just been in Lesotho.
Yeah.
So this is the school that we worked at. It was grades K through, which is 0 there, through 10. So we worked essentially with 7 through 10, I think, because anything younger than that, they were in their native language, their home language, and nobody spoke English as their first language, but everyone by the time they were in 7th grade can understand English really well.
Yeah. Nice.
And like I had to teach one of the English classes. I'm like, these kids know more about English than I do. This is not good. So anyhow, this is the school that we were at, and this is the principal. The lady is the principal, and the guy is I guess he would have been like our uncle.
Yeah,
Right.
because he was our host mom's brother.
Yeah. So, and he is the pastor at that school. So we were not at a Christian school. We were at a public school, but they have a pastor at every school because it is technically considered to be a Christian nation. However, there are frustrations that went along with what this Christian nation actually was teaching their children in school. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So this is one of the classrooms. This is one of the classes that I taught. So basically, what we ended up doing is we were stationed at a school. So Michael and I were at this particular school. Different people on the team were at different schools in the community. And so basically, I was like a glorified substitute teacher. They have kind of an attendance problem with teachers. And so basically every day they expected at least one teacher to be gone. And so that's the classroom that I went to. So I just kind of hung out in the teacher's lounge area until they figured out who wasn't there that day, and then they'd send me off to that classroom. I think my favorite was when they said, okay, we need you in the KKG class. Like, KKG is a language class. I don't speak that language. What on earth are you sending me there for? But essentially, I was just a supervisor, make sure they didn't do anything crazy. And Michael, he worked on the computer lab.
I did.
And so basically what went down was that they had this nice computer lab, but I don't think like any of the computers worked when he got
Nope.
there.
None of the computers worked. And it's for this area. I mean, this is like an emerging thing for them as far as like their government's coming to all these schools and they're putting in these nice computer labs, and they're actually really very complicated setups. But the teachers that are teaching the classes aren't getting educated as far as how to even maintain like the server or anything like that.
Yeah, a lot of the teachers weren't necessarily educated in what they were teaching. So like the chemistry and physics teacher, she had a degree in, I think, psychology. And she really wanted to be a life skills teacher, which we don't even have that here. But they didn't have a job for that, but they had a chemistry teacher job, so she took that. Like, I don't understand how that's what you're teaching, but whatever. And she seemed to do all right, but so it made it very challenging for people without the technical skills to manage this system. And so Michael basically got to be the manager of this system for the 6 weeks and get it up and running. And they sent him out to, he went to a couple other schools as well.
Yeah, I went to multiple schools because like another school actually had 3 computer labs. So they had essentially had like 100 computers, and the computers aren't by themselves. Like they have to have the server in order to pull the all the information from. It's, yeah.
So yeah, it was very strange because when you go in there, we were in what was considered to be the worst school, I believe, in the entire country. They were ranked the lowest on all of their scores. And then you walk in and you see this computer lab, and you're like, what on earth? This is not what you expect to see at the worst school in the entire country. But it was kind of cool that he was able to fix that and to see kids being able to actually learn these computer skills now that are actually really essential for them to have employment, but they haven't been able to do it for so long because
they said
the computer lab had been down for like 6 months.
Yeah.
And they had somebody that came in every few months to try and maybe do an update or something like that.
But they would have
terrible.
like one person come down from like hours away from this government technician, and he'd try to cover all 12 schools. So I mean.
So yeah, not a great system.
Yeah.
But anyhow, that was what Michael did for most of the time at that school. What I did, like I said, I was this like glorified substitute teacher. But since it was a Christian school, I was able to talk about whatever I wanted as I substituted. So I had really cool opportunities during the course of the day to just talk to kids about God, talk to kids about their views on things, and to a certain degree, try and undo some of the damage that had been done by these Christians that were at this school. It was very, very frustrating to see how the children were talked to. And, you know, all these teachers that were claiming to be Christians, and then the only way that they controlled their children was to get the stick out and beat them. And so I told the kids, I said, I'm going to make you this promise. I will never beat you. But here's what you got to do. Think about this. When you don't behave for me, and you behave for the people that beat you, you're telling them that they are right, that it is right to beat you, because that's the only way you will listen. But prove them wrong. Try your best to behave for me, and let everyone else see that you are good kids, that you are smart, that you can do well, and they don't need to beat you in order to get you to listen. And did it 100% work? No. But I think it was something that they'd never thought about, because all they've ever known for discipline was abuse. And they'd never known someone to actually love them enough to say, I'm not going to beat you. Right now, I kind of want to. But I will not, and I promise you I will not, no matter what.
And I think there's a difference between spanking and what they were doing.
Yeah, it was abusive. And it was really hard to watch. There's a few more pictures of the school that you can kind of go through a little bit. Like I said, we were able to have some really cool conversations. This was a school assembly, and those were really, really hard to watch because there was people standing up on the stage. The teachers also stayed up on the stage, and the students had to stand there for as long as we were in the assembly, which could be anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. And the teachers would stand there and hold their whips or hold their sticks, and if somebody got out of line, they got beat. And so as the pastor is up there teaching about God, the kids are getting beaten. As they're talking about how these great people donated money so that you can get these uniforms, the kids are getting beaten. And so to watch that was really, really difficult at times, and to see kind of the hypocrisy of what they said and then how they treated people. And what was hard was that is the mindset that people got in about what God was. That God was abusive, that God was hateful. we watched the pastor do a sermon to all these kids about how if, you're engaged in sexual activity, then you're going to hell and God hates you. And as the teachers are standing up there with whips. And we're just watching it going, oh my gosh, this is what they think Christianity is. This is what they think God is. And so, how do you combat that? And my goal, so we went in, and after that sermon, every class, I tried my best to say, listen, I love you. And my goal is to show you what love looks like. You may not have seen real love before. Maybe your idea of what a father is abuse. And I'm going to show you what life is without abuse. And my love is imperfect. God's love is perfect. And so what I give you is nowhere close to as good as what God can give you. But I want you to see somebody giving it to you and saying, you are worthy, you are loved, you are cherished. Maybe you haven't been treated that way, but it's the truth. That's how God honestly feels about you. And so that was the challenge that we were faced with. And then the other side of that was also, saying to these kids that some of them were in terrible, terrible situations at home. They would be, basically, a lot of the girls would be sold off to sugar daddies. So, these teenage girls, they're sent off with this, man that has money and will support the entire family for her, to have her. And so maybe they don't get to come to school as much as they would like. And they're probably sexually abused. Undoubtedly sexually abused. And then the pastor's saying, if you're sexually active, then you're going to hell and God hates you. Well, that's not their choice. They don't want to be in that behavior. They don't want to do that. But they're forced to, and then we're telling them that God hates them because that's what's happening to them. And it was just really, really difficult to see these kids have the total wrong mindset of what God was, who God is. And what I tried to explain to them as best I could was, the Bible says, stay free from this sexual activity until, and use it responsibly. That it's not a bad thing, but you need to be careful with it. And that it's similar to if your parents said, don't play with fire. Well, fire is a good thing. We need fire in order to survive. But if you use it irresponsibly, then you're going to get hurt. And I think that's how God views this situation of, he wants you to use it responsibly. He wants you to use it appropriately. However, if you make a mistake, if you do get burned, that doesn't mean your parents stop loving you. That doesn't mean that they hate you. It makes them sad. And I think God looks down on this situation and is just heartbroken. So much more than we could be, because it was just really, really hard to watch this and be heartbroken every day for these children. And to know that God has so much more of an idea of what's going on in their lives in this so-called Christian country. So anyhow, that's depressing. But
this school this was what was considered to be in Block E, because they don't have street names. They just have like this section of town is Block E, this section is Block B, and so long ago, like in the 40s or 50s or I don't know, they actually took all the black people and they separated them into Block E, and then they put this there was this road that separated Block E from the rest of this town. So Block E is the poorest part of the town. But this community, there's a lot of people trying to break down the barriers, and they're trying to undo what they had created.
Yeah, I think part of the issue is I mean, there were very good people that were trying really hard, but and I don't want to make it sound like everyone there was terrible. That wasn't the case, but this is what was being told to people. And I think part of the issue was that there's still this divide. I mean, it's not the black people have to stay on that side of town, and the and the coloreds, which is mixed. The coloreds are on this side of town. It's, well, if you're rich enough, you can live with the coloreds, but for the most part, you live on your side, and then the coloreds will come in and teach your kids. And so I think there's a certain level of, there's still that mindset of these people aren't good enough by the teachers, that they talk down to them a lot.
Well, and then like going back to what like we couldn't teach the younger kids because they spoke their native language, but like the school system, so they would take these kids with their native language, teach them Afrikaans, and then the government's expecting them to learn English because they're putting all the education in English. So now these kids have to learn 3 different languages because the teachers don't want to speak English, they want to speak Afrikaans. And so now they're just caught having to learn all these languages while trying to learn a basic education.
Yeah, so basically the kids are being tested in their 3rd language and expected to do well. And I don't think anybody in here probably has a 3rd language, so it's hard for us to even imagine. But some of these kids are speaking 5 languages on a regular basis. They just transitioned really well. And they did well, but it was just a matter of the Afrikaans-speaking people were complaining that their kids had to learn in English. And like, so, but the kids that spoke KKG had to learn in Afrikaans and English, and it's their 2nd and 3rd language. So there's just, it just didn't make sense. But anyhow, the cool thing about it was that I had great opportunity to speak life into these kids and to try and explain to them what the love of Christ actually is, and that he is not hateful, he is not mad at them, he loves them, and he wants desperately for them to come to him and come to an understanding of how loved they really are and how worthy they really are and how beautiful they are in him. So anyhow, that was the continuous thing during the time here. So this was the kids doing their Namibian dance. They did it several times. And I've got to tell another not so pleasant story, but they did this at several of the assemblies, and like when they had somebody that was giving a donation of some sort, they kind of did this show for them or whatever. And one of the times it was really tough because they had uniforms, and some people donated these tracksuits to the poorest kids there, which is great, awesome. However, the tracksuits didn't match what everybody else wore. It was the right colors, but they were clearly a different style. They looked very different from what everybody else was wearing. And so it's, hey, we're going to give you these tracksuits so that you can be pointed out as the poorest of the poor, essentially. And not only that, but let's parade you out on stage in front of the entire school and give you these things. So once again, that was great intentions, but terrible execution, and it was really, and I don't know if the kids were bothered by it or not, but it really bothered me to watch, these people making donations and doing good works, but then also trying to get, posing for the photo op and making it seem as though you did it because you wanted to look good rather than doing it because you really cared for these children. And I think that's something that we need to be careful of, because it's easy for us to say, yeah, I want to donate this and I'll feel good and I want to get pictures and that kind of stuff. And pictures are not in and of themselves a bad thing if they're done and if it's taken care of in the right way. But I feel like how this was taken care of was very much a very bad way of doing it.
We can also do this on a lower level too. It's not, we don't have to be thinking, oh, we need to get the pictures and stuff. I mean, we could just be giving money very like passively and just not knowing that's actually creating a hurtful problem.
Well, yeah, one of the things that we were told in all of the countries actually was, do not give the kids candy. They will come up for you and ask for sweeties. Don't do it. Like, okay, well, why not? Said, well, because they've gotten in their head that white people give candy. And so their parents give them stuff, but it's not good enough for them because the white people give better stuff. So they said, don't do that because you make their parents feel like they can't do enough for their children when they're trying their best to do it. And so that was a really hard line to balance because we got asked for sweeties all the time. And it's, yeah, I'd love to give you some, but we have a strict rule against not doing that. And then we'd turn it around and say, well, I'm coming to visit you. Why don't you give me sweeties? Come on.
Yeah.
They didn't, and that kind of got them off our back a little bit. I did pull that on a class once, and they're like, oh, bring us candy. I'm like, I'm teaching you. You better bring me candy. I earned it. So anyhow, it was just kind of something different that these parents are really, really trying. And sometimes what we're doing is actually being counterproductive and things that we're like, oh, well, it'd be fun to give this kid candy. But what is the long-term effect of that? And making us think about the long-term effect rather than, oh, yeah, they want candy right now, cool. So anyhow, we got to watch a netball game. I still don't understand netball. It's kind of like basketball, I guess. So that was kind of interesting. And this is the church that we worked through.
It's a pretty big church.
Yeah, it's a good-sized church, and it's got like 3 different churches within Rehoboth. And they basically set up our schedule. They organized everything for us. They did arranged our travel from place to place. And they kept us very, very busy, which, once again, was challenging because there were things that we would have really liked to do, but we couldn't do because we were so busy doing busy work. So, like, there were times that it was like, well, this kid at school, he doesn't know how to read. I would love to work with him one-on-one, but I have to go do this kid's club. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and then Friday I have to do something at night, and then Saturday. So,
or even going to like a netball game. Like kids are like, "Oh, come watch me at my netball game." It's like I would have loved to go.
Yeah, so that was challenging. That sometimes we felt like us being busy and us looking good and looking like we were doing enough got in the way of us actually building the relationships that we wanted to build. And I think, once again, that very much applies to life here. I mean, how often is it that you are running, and you miss the people that are standing right in front of you? That you have these great opportunities to talk to people. You have great opportunities to say, you know, how was your day? No, really, how was your day? I want to hear from you. Let's talk about it. But we don't do that because we're thinking about the next thing that we have to go to. And so that was kind of a challenge for us of, we are seeing this in another country, but we have it back home. And we need to make sure we apply that to our lives all the time, not just when we're doing mission work.
Even within a project, like let's say you're going to do some landscaping around the church or something, and we all come here, like a big group of us. It's like, and then we're also focused on just the task at hand. It's like, it doesn't matter how long the task take. I mean, we're supposed to just be together and just have fun doing it and just learn about each other, you know?
And it's not saying that we don't want to get the task done.
Yeah. We're
going to get the task done. It's just a matter of whether it's beneficial relationally or whether it just makes the place look prettier. And so once again, that was another big lesson to be learned there. So this was one of the kids' clubs. We did a lot of kids' clubs. This is the one at the church. We did on Wednesdays. Eventually, I will get to some like happy things, but we had a lot of fun with the kids. The biggest frustration that we encountered here was, and with a couple of the kids' clubs that we encountered, was that whole busyness, and they were just trying to do stuff to make themselves look good or to make us look good, but there was going to be very little carry through after we finished, because they didn't have people lined up to continue these kids clubs after we left. And so we really struggled with that, and we really tried to get people involved in making sure that they're going to continue these programs. But there was one day that it was just very frustrating because there was this other kids club in town. It was people from South Africa had come in for the week, and we're just doing this big thing for a week, and we're like, okay, cool. So they had a random Thursday off of school, and we were scheduled to go out and hang out with these missionaries from South Africa at this kids club. But they were having something every single day, 2 blocks away from the church that we were at. So we said, well, there's a kids club down the road on this Wednesday. Why don't we just combine kids clubs and, work together? And that way we're not trying to like steal each other's kids. We can have some sort of continuity. But we were told, absolutely not. This is our kids club. We're going to have it. And then you can go work with them tomorrow. Like, that makes no sense to me. Why are we working so hard to build our programs in our church that we're missing the greater picture? That we're missing the fact that it's not this church and this group and that group. It's we are all one. Let's find the greater picture in this and see we're all trying to reach the same kids with the same message. Let's work together and love on these kids even better. But instead, it was, let's make sure we maintain our numbers and we look good and people know that we have this program. And I, once again, think that that's very prevalent here. I mean, in America, not necessarily here, but I think that happens here as well at times too, that we get so focused on making sure our program is successful, that our stuff is successful, that our numbers are hit, that we miss who we're trying to reach, that we're trying to steal people from each other when really we need to be bringing more people in. And so, once again, that was a very obvious circumstance that, it just didn't make sense for us to work with one place here against them and then work with them the next day with the same
There
kids.
was a lot of churches in that town.
Yeah. And they were kind of just fighting against each other rather than choosing to work together to reach the children, especially in Block E. Block E kids were a lot of times left out of it because they were too far away.
I mean, and we had conversations with some of the leaders, and some of the leaders were noticing this, and they were trying to we need to unite all our churches together. We need to stop fighting with each other.
Yeah, it was really cool, actually. One of our host mom, her name is Renelle, and somehow we don't have any pictures of Renelle. But she was a part of a team through the church that we were at that was trying to figure out how to best serve the needs of the community and getting things, because I like spreadsheets, I'll call it a spreadsheet, of who's doing what. And figuring out how many soup kitchens there are, and then how many places there are that are teaching people a skill. And there are all kinds of soup kitchens, but no one taking the next step to get them on their own, to teach them how to farm, to teach them how to, do the garden or sew or whatever. And so they were working really hard to try and figure out how to get this integrated and get people working together and say, all right, we don't need 20 soup kitchens. 1 or 2 will be plenty. Let's use our resources to do the next step, to do something more than just relief. So, yeah. people were working on it, and it was really, really cool to see her passion behind it and to have that conversation with her that, yes, we know this is an issue, and we're trying really hard to rectify it. So once again, not all bad. But anyhow, this would be one of the kids' clubs. The kids loved my hair. They were really into blonde, straight hair because they hadn't experienced that. So I don't even know what they were doing with my hair at that point in time. I just learned to stop asking, just go with it. And when we took the bus ride home, have the teammates help me undo whatever had happened. And then we had a really cool opportunity to, this was with the...
this is inside the church that we were at.
Yes, this was at the church. We did a lock-in with the high school kids. So I don't remember how many kids we actually had, maybe 50? Something like that?
Yeah.
I don't know. That we, from all the different schools, so we were able to pull, since there were so many people in schools, we were able to pull from all the different high schools in the area and have this lock-in. And just, have a chance to goof around, dance, sing, and then speak some life into these kids, and basically just try and say, you're welcome at a church. Like, we're pretty sure a couple of the kids were high, but they were welcome in the church, and that we love you, and we want you to be here. We want to build relationships with you. Please continue to come and get to know our God. So anyhow, we got to have some cool discussion. That was with my group, which they were crazy. We got to have a really good discussion about, the things that become roadblocks between us and God, not feeling good enough or putting other things first. And so to be able to have an open, honest conversation with these kids was pretty sweet. And I just realized that everybody in my group was, all of us were blondes. That's weird.
Yeah, and I think most of those kids were already part of that church.
Some of them were, some of them weren't. Roberto, the one, that one over there.
Yeah.
He was a very interesting fellow. He was so much fun. Very flamboyant would be the word. But he was so passionate, and him and his friend Lulu would do a song or a dance every Sunday. It was just crazy.
They would do where they had the fabric and they do the dancing. Yeah,
they did crazy dance stuff, but it was cool. And I don't think Michael should be doing that. But. But that's just my opinion. Verity could pearl it off. Michael, no. Okay. So anyhow, we'll move on. It was kind of fun to see these kids that were really active in the church and getting excited to have people that were wanting to really work with them and being willing to pull other people in to help us reach them. So this was just us playing silly games. Something with a pillow between your legs. I don't know. You had to pass it. I don't remember. But it was good fun. We got pretty competitive with it. This was at Renee Kids shelter or whatever. And they had a really cool ministry. This was actually in Block E. And it was, several people from the Netherlands that were putting this program on. And Dutch and Afrikaans are very similar. They can basically understand each other because the languages are so similar. So it's pretty easy for the people from the Netherlands to speak with the people here in Namibia in Afrikaans. So we were a part of their program every Monday where it was just kind of sing and dance and play, and then we did a Bible story. And then every week they got an apple and a sandwich to go home with. So that was kind of cool to be able to meet the needs of these kids and to be able to play with them and that sort of thing. Yeah, I got a couple pictures of that. And then
That facility actually was really big.
Yeah, yeah. And so the other cool thing that they did was, so like if kids had dropped out of school or had been kicked out of school or something like that, they actually did like a tutoring program there the rest of the week. And they worked really hard with these kids that maybe didn't have any other place to go. So it was a really awesome ministry that we were able to be a part of. And they've got, like I said, a very nice facility. This was out at a school called ESIP.
Yeah.
It was, like 40 minutes away, something like that.
It's way out in the boonies.
Oh, yeah, it's kind of terrifying to go out there. And these, like, dirt roads that you just, you have no idea where the heck you're at.
It's like sand. It's all sand.
Yeah. So anyhow, these kids, what was interesting there is a lot of the kids that went there didn't actually live anywhere close. And so they actually stayed in what we would consider to be like a dorm type thing. They called it a hostel. And it wasn't the best situation. All the kids were like in a couple rooms. And what we found out was that at this hostel, there was a lot of abuse of the younger boys by the older boys. And so that was something that the girls that were at the school full-time had mentioned. And so they decided that maybe the guys in our group, at that point there were 3 guys in our group, could figure out how to talk to these boys in a way to explain to them how to behave a little bit more appropriately.
We only had 2 more weeks left there?
Yeah, so I think it was mentioned earlier than that, but it didn't end up happening until later. So what they ended up doing is we just said, okay, we'll divide up girls and boys. And so they, I think, did 2 talks with the boys and did 2 talks with the girls about, the first one was just life and, the differences between boys and girls and puberty and that kind of stuff. And then the second time, after they'd kind of had a chance to build the relationship a little bit more, talk to them about the more serious issues that were going on and hopefully decrease at least some of the abuse that was going on. And then with the girls, we spent our time basically saying, you don't need a man to be successful. You are enough. Don't feel like you need a relationship. Don't feel like you need a man. You are capable of anything that you want. It's just setting your mind to it, working hard, and trying to get them to understand that no matter what anybody said, they are beautiful and that they are loved. So that was kind of our main focus there, because I think a lot of times the kids there just didn't have any idea that they were worth anything. Because a lot of times they'd been sent off to school and they didn't see their parents for years.
Yeah.
Because they just lived in the hostel. So anyhow, it was a lot of fun to be able to work with these kids and love on them, and they were just so excited to have somebody that would come out and hang out with them. And I think this is actually a program that hopefully will be continuing. There was a lady that was pretty into it and came out with us one day and intends to continue doing this program. So that was really cool to be able to get it started, but know that it's going to be continuing. And this is us just hanging out at ESA, playing with the kids. We had kind of our core group of people. So that I was with the older girls, and so there was 10 of us that had a decent relationship there and could really visit a little bit more. And now we're just goofing around with the kids. This was Kelsey. I don't even know what she was doing. She was doing some sort of interpretive dance that the kids were following. We're like, all right, go for it. The kids seem to be enjoying it. And just all kinds of craziness. But it was good fun.
Oh, jeez.
So, how to explain this one? So, there was one night that we were invited to go to a Pentecostal church. We didn't know that that's what we were doing. We thought we were going to singing thing.
Yeah.
And apparently it was a church service, and so we got harassed quite a bit that we weren't dancing enough, singing enough, doing enough. We needed to be jumping around a lot more for the devil to be afraid of us. We're like, well, I'm going to be a little bit afraid of us soon. So anyhow, it was one of those situations. They said, somebody from your group come up and sing. We're like, what? No. So Kelsey, one in the middle, was like, oh, I have a song. This Little Light of Mine. Okay. So she got up there, and Kyler and Michael joined her, and like, all right, they just sang This Little Light of Mine to their heart's content. And it was pretty impressive. But anyhow, it was a very interesting night, and I think one of the things that we really learned from it was what some people might feel like coming into another situation, that they're being told that they're not good enough, they're not a good enough Christian because they don't do X, Y, and Z, because that's what we were being told. And that's not true. I know my heart, I know my relationship with God, and I know that the devil is afraid of me because he showed me in multiple ways that he's afraid of me because he's tried to stop us from doing stuff over the last few years. And so to be told that kind of opened my eyes to how often do we say that to other people. Maybe we don't say it as obviously as this guy said to us, which was like, what's wrong with you? Jump. We're like, okay. But I think as a church, sometimes we can do that to people that are coming in and that maybe view things a little bit differently, and it's not right and it's not wrong, it's just different, and we need to be accepting of that. And so I think it was a really good thing to experience that very obvious, you're not good enough, so that we can make sure that we're not doing that to other people.
Yeah, didn't that relate kind of to one of our teammates?
Yes. Anyhow, so now it's more on to the more amusing stuff. This is what is called a poikie. This is what we did pretty much every Saturday, essentially, is cook out over the fire with this pot. And it was a big family thing. There'd be 30, 40 people at these poikies, and we just kind of learned, especially that when they say we're going to eat at 1, that means 3:30. And if we're going to be home by 5, that means maybe by dark, but probably not. So anyhow, it was a really cool time to be able to hang out with the family and get to know people and really see how they do life there and really experience it. We ended up getting one of the poikie pots, and we're having one today. Woo! So this was actually part of a poikie. Afterwards, we got together and sang songs with the family, and it was a really cool thing to be able to be a part of their family and their faith and to see how they live it out every day. And that was our grandpa. I just think he's cute.
He only spoke Afrikaans.
Yeah, he didn't speak English. So it was really interesting communicating with him, but he was sweet. Anyhow, and that was what the awful poikie looked like. And I'm not being rude saying that it was an awful poikie. That's what they call it.
You should probably please pray for our family members that are here today when they go to eat our food.
So anyhow, an awful poikie meant that there was, in this particular one, it was the skull and the hooves and then the stomach. And so no one's going right to eat after this, right? So we actually opened up the skull and passed it around the table, and everyone took a spoonful of the brains. We didn't have much of a choice in the matter. It was, that's what you're going to do. Fortunately, the eyeball was a delicacy, so they didn't let us have that. So we have eaten goat brain, and I think we will just do that once. And we've had just about every part of a goat, so it was a great honor for us to be allowed to do this. It really was. But it wasn't terribly enjoyable, but it was an experience. So anyhow, our Poiky, our awful Poiky. Yeah. So you can, I don't know how many other pictures there are of the Poiky, but, okay, and then this is just a cool picture. I think that's like Africa right there. And that was out at great-grandma's house, I think, out of Aesop, the town that we went out to in the middle of nowhere. Our host dad's grandmother lived out there. And so...
that was actually really bizarre because we actually lived in a really nice house, but then like we drove out and we passed the school, and we drove down this, they would just have random roads going into the like different parts of the wooded area, and then we drove over like a sanded river.
Yeah,
and she lived in like a shack.
Yeah, it was really interesting, but it was really cool.
Yeah.
It was beautiful, and this was actually taken in a cemetery, strangely enough. But yeah, that's my Africa picture. So this is my dog bite. I got bit by a dog while I was there. I got attacked. There's 3 pictures of that, so you can just scroll through those. So I got to enjoy the African healthcare system. And what was interesting was I ended up getting 10 stitches. I'm nice and healed now. And if you haven't heard about it, it's because I didn't tell people about it until I got home, because I didn't want people to worry. No one knew. So anyhow, what was cool is I got 10 stitches. I got 5 rabies shots, a tetanus shot, and just overall regular bandage changes and that sort of stuff. I had to go to a clinic. The total cost of my health care was $2.50. So that was kind of sweet. I was pretty nervous when I got attacked. I'm like, oh crap, this is going to cost a lot of money. But no, it was $2.50. That and, the use of my hand, that was the other thing that I was nervous about. But yeah, it was 25 Namibian dollars, so $2.50 American. But what was cool is, in a weird way, it opened up doors to communication that I wouldn't have had otherwise, because the reason it's so inexpensive is because so many people get attacked by dogs there, that it's just a very normal thing. And so it was, yeah, I got attacked by a dog. Oh, let me tell you my stories of getting attacked by dogs. And so it was this strange open door to the locals there, because it was, yeah, I understand. I've been attacked by a dog too. So, is there any more pictures? Okay, so that was all of our luggage. And as we packed up, and that was our last team photo in front of our Billiam bus. So, anyhow, I successfully talked the entire time again. So it looks like we'll be having a 4th session. So you guys can actually ask questions. I don't have any idea when that'll be yet, because it was up in the air as to whether we were going to do it. But it looks like that's what we need to do, so that's what we'll do. Okay. We weren't anywhere close to it. We were way far south from like the Liberia and that kind of stuff. So we had like a solid 5 countries in between us and the Ebola stuff. So we didn't really have any concerns there. Yep, so no worries. You're not going to catch it from us. Yes?
Do you want to go back? Would you do it again?
That's a good question. And that's actually a question that we've been asked a lot. So I think at this point, people think that we're being like evasive, but we honestly don't know. What is next for us? Right now, I think we would both be surprised if we don't end up overseas again. We think that we probably will end up doing mission work in some realm, but we have no idea what that's going to look like yet. We have no idea where that might be. It would be really cool to be able to go back to some of the places that we've been and see people again, but I don't know if that's where we're called to go.
Yeah.
And as you guys know, most of you, the path to where we ended up was not the path that we would have liked it to be, that we took a very convoluted route to going on this trip. And so we've learned very much to just go with it, and that God will lead us, and we don't know how he's going to lead us, but he will. And there is not a doubt in our mind that we are exactly where we were supposed to be at exactly the right time, and we have faith that God will do the same thing again if we're supposed to go overseas. Would we like to? Yes. Will we? I don't know. We'll see what God has in store for us.
Yeah.
It was all the school systems, yeah. I think Block E was the roughest, but everyone experienced it. All of the teammates would come back, and when we did debrief every weekend, they would talk about how it was just really tough to watch. I think there might have been one school that didn't so much, or it was a lot less, but there was beatings everywhere.
We actually found out that they had actually implemented a law, and they're trying to change, and they're trying to get the teachers' mindsets to
Yeah, technically it is against the law there to engage in corporal punishment. However, it hadn't actually made its way to practice. I think it was the government.
Yeah.
It was the government-funded thing. And so I don't know beyond that, but the government required every school to have like a computer class, and then they helped provide the computer room. Yeah.
Was it a common practice amongst all of the different, like the E's and the B's and the C's, to like indenture their teenage daughters out, or was it mostly the really poor section?
It was mostly in Block E that I heard of that happening. I didn't really hear of it happening other places. I wouldn't say that it didn't happen, but it was a lot more common practice in the Block E. So, and truthfully, I wouldn't have known it was going on except that the pastor at the school explained it to us. But otherwise, we wouldn't have had any idea. But I think we probably need to wrap up. And if you have more questions, we will for sure have time to answer them next time, because that's what we're going to be doing. So write them down if you want, and come with lots of questions. All right? So thank you for once again listening.